Hello and welcome to another edition of Whether or Not. Kind of jumped the gun there. Started talking before this fantastic music. So let's just let it play for a little bit. How you doing, Brian?
Well, I'm doing all right. How are you today?
Doing well. Had a nice weekend. The weather was nice. Got a couple of things done outside. We had some company over on Saturday evening, and they ate my jar of jalapenos. We had a taco bar set up.
You put it to good use, right?
I did.
Now you need some more.
Right, and I made more. I think I have, they're just the maybe half pint jars that I fill with jalapenos, and I think I have maybe 10 of them still.
Oh.
That I've made this year.
Okay. Well, you're doing all right.
I'm doing pretty good with the peppers.
Yeah.
The tomatoes are something different.
Well, that's an interesting subject because I think in our garden, too, I've noticed the tomatoes they're popping, but it's been a little bit slower maybe in some regards. But then again, I want to say my tomato garden got off to a slower start because I didn't get out there right away either. So, but there's plenty of heat left in the month. I'm sure of that, as we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, we are looking at a relatively busy day. Now, when we look at the outline here, you could almost just lump all of this together, almost all of it, not that we're not, into the pattern. Well, we're in the middle, I would think, of drying out right now. And I have some stats to show coming up here before I toss it to the break. Also, looking at cooler temperatures next week. But the interesting thing is those numbers are close to average. And we already talked a little bit about the or not with our gardens, and we'll elaborate more on that coming up. Well, we have smoke. This has been a topic, it seems like, going back since, last summer with the thick smoke that we've had. And here's our hot spots, fire, smoke product here, and you see a lot of that in the Dakotas. As we do take a trip to the north, you could see those hot spots into central Canada. And, with that Canadian air mass over us, we had our cool temperatures this weekend. That continues into the early part of next week. There's the smoke, there's the haze that will be in the air as we do go through the day today. And I know, Brian, you had a smoke forecast on KELOLAND this morning, and you have that one up?
Yes, I do.
Let's go ahead and show it.
And the thing about this product here is it does a pretty good job of depicting the descension of the smoke from where the source regions are from Canada. So we know that that's obviously part of this outlook. And, not just for us. We've had a lot of smoke in the northern part of the country this summer. But notice how in the next 24 hours that plume goes into Minnesota. Let's look at this one more time. There we are this afternoon. There goes into Minnesota up toward Duluth. And then on the backside of this cold front, there appears to be a little gap zone in there. So finally, you'll be able to see on the horizon and actually not have that obscured visibility quite so much. However, we're mindful, too, that, even as I say that, there's another push of smoke that comes in north of Grand Forks. Now, the thickest of that is forecast to be over Duluth tomorrow. So, boy, wouldn't it be nice tomorrow if we could cool things just a few degrees and we didn't have to have such terrible smoke? Is that possible?
Tomorrow, we may be in the 70s in northeastern South Dakota for afternoon highs. Keep in mind the lower humidity. That will continue tomorrow. Sioux Falls, maybe around 80. It'll be nice if we could thin out this smoke. You're right.
Yeah, it's been quite an issue. Air quality alerts are still out for Minnesota. That's one thing, too, that as you look at the differences in the states, how they handle that, just so you know that obviously South Dakota side, too, has plenty of air quality issues as well. But just to let you know, that's where the official alerts are. We're hopeful, though, that maybe, again, we can see some reductions on that. I do have a sneaky suspicion that once we turn the corner on this heat and humidity again, we'll probably lose some of the smoke. But there's a trade-off.
Yes, there is that trade-off. We'll return to some thicker dew point temperatures later in the week. Let's go ahead and I hit the right button. Show you our forecast for today as we bring up our other computer graphics here. Later today, it looks like parts of north central South Dakota, there is a weak front that will move through, and that can spark an isolated shower or thunderstorm. We'll say late this afternoon, early this evening, and I'm just calling these isolated. 20% chance central to northeastern South Dakota. Anything that develops will try to move east and maybe southeast, and then I think it loses a lot of its energy as the sun sets. And we'll see our shower and thunderstorm chances really come to an end as we do go through the overnight hours. I do not think they'll make it as far southeast as, say, the Sioux Falls area, let alone for Brookings. So I do think a lot of this will probably stay confined between Aberdeen and Watertown during the evening, maybe running into the early part of tonight. That's a look at midnight. You see a couple of those near Watertown trying to make their way to the west and to the north of the Watertown area. And then as we go through the overnight, a lot of those do show a weakening trend. I've noticed, Brian, over the past, several weeks, it seems like Pierre's been one of the hot spots throughout much of the year. And this is what I've grown accustomed to. I came in 98, and I just remember Pierre during those summers, during the early part when I was here, 90s, 100s seemed to be common for that central part of the state. It doesn't seem to happen as much anymore.
You've made this observation a number of times, and then it was interesting how this summer it seems like that cycle of some of those old throwbacks have come, full circle. Because not only that, but then we've had so many discussions, probably since I would say the better part of the last 5 to 10 years about. We'd say, you remember when we get these more traditional? We talk about
supercells.
The supercell storms, the traditional talking points on severe weather, and then we would go through a stretch of years where we just didn't have very much of that at all, which is not a bad thing. But it was always the non-traditional, or what I would say maybe the less conventional severe weather. We get, we had a lot of years in there where it was, squall lines with tornadoes that would form, not with a hook echo, but just different things. Or, we just have a hodgepodge of just different things in the summer that were affecting us. And then this summer, we've had way more tornadoes than...
We've had more supercells, it seems like.
Correct.
And we've had... I should check this, too. I know we've had at least 3 days of 100-degree heat in Pierre.
Yeah. And that heat in the middle part of the state, it'll be an interesting just to, look back when we get done with the summer, how that all shakes out. But you're right. This whole thing of 90-degree heat in Pierre has dried things out, too, out there.
Yeah, not only for central, but central South Dakota, and we'll talk about that coming up as well. But so far this year, and I did a comparison from the climate average since records have been taken. Okay, this isn't going back only 30 years, but since records have been taken, in June, Pierre gets the 90 at least 6 times, and you see the list there, 16 times in July, 14 in August. So we're on track in June, and then July, we missed it by 2 days, but so far this month, we've had 4 days with temperatures in the 90s for Pierre, and we'll probably throw in today as well. 93 degrees, our forecast high in Pierre, mostly sunny. 80s, 90s in our forecast, maybe a couple of scattered showers and thunderstorms in the northeastern South Dakota. We'll talk more about this weather pattern coming up as we continue with Weather or Not. Welcome back to Weather or Not. Let's take a look at the pattern ahead as we do have some cooler temperatures on the way. But before that happens, we do have another quick warm-up with temperatures returning to the 80s, 90s. We'll see how close we get to hitting 100, and along with it, we'll have some higher humidity. So there's a quick look at the pattern. I've been showing this throughout the past couple of weeks. It loops through about 5 times, but it's been showing more or less the same thing. We have this area of high pressure that dances to our south, and we'll continue to follow exactly where that goes as our storm systems like to run the edge of that high pressure system to bring in better chances for rain. And we'll eventually start to see that again once we increase our temperatures and bring in some thicker humidity. This is a look at next week, early next week by Tuesday. We're watching the tropics as well. It's that time of year. It looks like we're getting something off the eastern coast of the United States. But for us, I think this is rather interesting. And I'll talk more about our temperature trend coming up here in a bit. But with high pressure to our southwest, you do notice that we're practically in this northwest flow for at least the eastern part of Keloland. And with our temperatures expected to return, I would say, to the lower 80s by the time we do get into next week, especially later next week, that's actually close to average. The average high temperature by the time we get there is around 81, 82 degrees. So we are slowly watching these average high temperatures go down over the next several days. And, that just is a little bit more pronounced, too, as high pressure moves to the southwest. We could still see this the cooler air that will stick around maybe as we do get into the 22nd of the month. I think that's when our average high actually falls to 81. And then after that, I don't see any big warm-ups, but we could still get those temperatures returning to the middle 80s. But nothing as a substantial warm-up as what we may see over the next couple of days when we do return to the 90s and maybe hitting 100 for some later this week. As far as the rain goes, we do have our chances for rain. May have to wait a couple of days in parts of eastern and southeastern Kettleland to see our scattered showers and thunderstorms. But over the next 2 weeks, it fills things in for central, eastern South Dakota, western Kettleland. Not as much. So I talked a little bit about our days of dry weather and our consecutive days of dry weather, all depending on where you're at in Kettleland. So we are in the middle of a dry spell right now. But when you look over the past 7 days, the past week, of course, it all depends on where you live. These are rainfall estimates over the past week. Now, it just tells the story. Eastern South Dakota able to pick up on those rains anywhere from 1 inch to 1.5 inches, some spots a little more, some spots a little less. But I think central, south central, and western South Dakota, those areas really stand out with seeing around the trace to maybe 1/4 inch of rainfall. And that dry pattern is continuing. And of course, the warmer weather just feeds off of that too. So we will watch for warmer temperatures that will make their way into those areas. The consecutive days without rainfall. I thought this was an interesting stat to bring up. Here's a look at Sioux Falls, Brian, and I'll bring you into this as well. As you know, for Sioux Falls itself, the longest stretch we've had is 7 days without rainfall, and that goes back to June 4th through 10th, and then it falls to 4, and then it's interesting that it falls to 4, 3 times there, and then it's less than that as you look through the rest. And this is just going through the summer, June, July, and so far this month of August.
Yeah.
But the longest stretch that we've had, it's only been 7 days, okay? We're in such a stretch right now, so if we don't get any rain, we're up to 5 today. Watertown seems like they've been getting rain every other day. They've been getting measurable rain. So, of course, the amounts there, they're not as long. The longest stretch we've had is 4 days, and you see that from July 11th through 14th. But let's check out winter. South central South Dakota. Now, that's been an area that's been dry, and you can see the prolonged dry spells that we've had in south central South Dakota by as many as 8 consecutive days without rain in the middle of July, and then it falls to 3 times when we've had a full week without receiving any rainfall. So it's interesting to see that central part of the state, south central part of the state, without our rain. And you mentioned before that it's just one local thunderstorm moved through winter. I forgot what day it was, but I think it dropped around 2 inches of rainfall.
Yeah, and something like that can alter the numbers even more. On that topic too, I just pulled up this 60-day anomaly map. This is a map that keeps track of, how many inches above or below normal are we for the month of July and the month of June, and a little bit of August, obviously. And it's interesting because it has that donut hole right over that south central area of South Dakota.
Can you move that over onto the...
Yeah, let me do that quickly. In fact, I know what I did here. I was actually looking at that just a moment ago. And one of the things about that, Scott, is that when we look at these patterns, it's an interesting, way to assimilate or to look at all the data points here. And we, of course, have a lot of tracking tools here in the Storm Center. This is the one here I was going to show you right here. So just got to bring that up here. We'll just play with this here on the show. So this is the total precip. So you can definitely see there's, a lot less rain over winter and some of these outlying areas there to the west, 5 inches of rain the last 60 days. And then you look at Sioux Falls, you've got, numbers 9 up to as much as 15 inches of rain around Vermilion and Yankton. I don't know if you can see all those numbers. Let me do this here. I'll make them a little bigger so we can kind of zoom in a little bit. But it's an interesting trend. And that's something that we can identify right now. And that's only one product. That's just the total amount of water out of all these storms the last 60 days. If it hadn't been for the jump in what we saw, late June and July, that's quite a lot of rain for that time of the year. Typically, it starts to dry out. So there's a lot of things when we get done with this summer we'll probably be doing a post-analysis on. But the fact of the matter is a lot of that rain has fallen over the heavier agricultural areas of eastern South Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa. It'll be interesting to see how the crop yields turn out as a result of that. other than the local windstorms and the hail events that have happened.
Yep.
That's part of it. But I would say there's probably at the end of the day going to be a lot more grain out there than there would have been otherwise. Because honestly, even Scott at my house, I was telling you behind the scenes in the commercial breaks this morning on the show, there's still a little bit of water stress, and I don't think my sump pump, other than just a little bit here and there, I don't think there's
Hasn't been
anything
going off much.
No, not and the tile lines that feed some of the ditches. Maybe if I was to look, there might be a little bit in there, but it's nothing at all where I've had ton of rain and now we've filled the reserves. We haven't had that, but we've had enough rain, timely rain, and that's the key phrase: timely rains, and that's always the case in agriculture. You pick up the right rain at the right time, it can be $1 million rain, or more than that, but you miss those rains and then you start to cycle downhill. And that's what we're seeing out there with those fire weather concerns in the south central and southwest.
Yeah, and then of course that just feeds off of the temperatures. Those temperatures have been warming to the 90s and been a little hotter in the central, western South Dakota. You mentioned those timely rains too, and that's been good across eastern Kettleland because it seems like it will rain. We may cool for a day or two, and then we're right back up into the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Just zaps some of that moisture out.
And when you warm up again, you run through a lot of water in your water budget. So those plants take that up. They're instantly producing humidity. So we've seen that cycle, but we've just been catching those rains. But now this week, there's a little gap in here for some of us. So now we'll get to see where the next cycle of weather goes for the rest of the month.
And we're losing our sun angle, aren't we?
We are. A little bit.
A little bit.
Which I'm fine with when I need to get to bed.
We're not saying summer's over by any means. But we are looking at some cooler temperatures as we do get into, maybe next week. This is almost running, piggybacking on Brian here. When I get up in the morning and I go ahead and, get my cup of coffee and I start running through some of the computer models, and this caught my eye this morning and said, okay, yeah, we'll warm up again back to the 80s to near 90 degrees. And then I thought this to be a little interesting here, how the numbers fall to the lower 80s. Like, oh, nice, we'll have some cooler weather return. And then I looked at some other information. I kind of, write things out on Sunday to bring in some, climate stats, what the averages are. And then as I start to write things down in the morning, I'm like, wait a minute, those numbers are close to average anyway when we get into the lower 80s next week.
Yeah, that catches up to us, doesn't it?
It does.
So even cooling to average, we'll obviously see some of those anomalies on the maps. But, we typically rely on that little cooler pattern. But it's never, there's not a certainty on all of that. And one thing I do see here, too, is the tendency for that heat ridge to the southwest of us, as it kind of does that waffling back and forth. It'll be interesting to see how any tropical weather that develops underneath the ridge when we get into week 2, maybe week 3. Sometimes there can be things in there that can alter where those things sit. And if we happen to get caught up into an upper level ridge pattern, maybe we sit a little warmer. We'll just have to kind of wait and see how that wild card plays out.
Yes. In the meantime, let's talk about our gardens. But you know what? We'll talk more about that after the break. Welcome back to Weather or Not. And Brian, it's time to talk about the or not. We haven't been talking about that as of late just because it seems like it's been very busy since we started the show with all the severe weather and the heavy rainfall. But it's nice to get into more of a quiet pattern. And
Yes.
what better way to enjoy the quiet pattern than to see what's going on in the garden?
Right. I think you're absolutely correct on that. It's been, since we launched this show, it seems like a lot of days our agenda has been so full of things that we cover here, and then we turn right back around and go on television or online, and we're talking about storms. But today, we're going to visit a little bit about the gardens and hobbies and all that. And so I'm wondering what your garden is looking like.
Well, it's I think the peppers are doing better than the tomatoes. Okay, the tomatoes there are on the left, the peppers there are on the right, and I just merged these two graphics together. But as these were going throughout the year, I'm looking at them, I'm looking out the window going, my goodness, those pepper plants are as tall as the tomatoes are. Now, the tomatoes did eventually shoot a little higher.
Yeah.
But I have never had pepper plants be this good, this early in the year.
Wow. So a good crop coming in. You got more blooms on the plants too? They coming in?
I do. Yeah, they're still producing peppers.
So You have peppers. Oh, and you have this too. I was
Yeah.
curious if you were going to show this.
I have 4 watermelon coming in, and next to the
Wow.
watermelon are cucumbers. And I have 4 watermelon coming in. Some
Is that
seedless,
watermelon
some seeded.
squeezing the fence right there? Is it growing in between?
It is, and that's just twine that I put on PVC
Oh,
piping. That's
okay.
all that is. So they're viney, so I let them hang.
Yep.
We'll see what happens. But so far I have 4. I haven't seen any new ones come in. I might think it might be a little too late in the year to actually get some new ones come in.
Yeah.
But it'll be nice to see what happens with these 4. I have a seedless plant. No, I'm sorry. I have 2 seedless plants and 1 seeded plant.
Okay. So
That's what they told me at the greenhouse.
Okay,
You
so
needed you had seedless. You need a seeded one too.
So you get the pollination factor there. So how do they hang there? Do they get too heavy and can they plop off, or do they?
They'll eventually continue to slowly fall.
Okay.
Until they probably hit the ground. And I've had other years where the twine has been able to just suspend them.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really neat.
It's a really nice design.
It's kind of
Very efficient there, Scott. You get, growing watermelons in a compact space like that.
Why not?
I like that. Well, we do have 1 watermelon in my picture.
Look at
garden.
that. Yeah,
So
I
this
don't
is-
have land like that. That looks great.
Well, it's a nice little space. My daughter Lily's there, and she helped me pick some green beans last night. I'm like, oh, I need to get pictures for Scott for the show tomorrow. So here's what we have. Now, tomatoes, it's interesting. They look a lot like yours.
Okay.
I think they're about the same. And this is one of the plants. We got a few of them around there, but there's several that are, they're getting into their zone. There's several on this plant, but they're all green and they got a ways to go. So that's how that looks. And then looking down the sweet corn patch, well, we don't have I like to say in our garden, we plant a lot of things, a little bit of a lot of things. So there's a little bit of sweet corn, there's a little bit of beans, there's,
Do you still do popcorn?
Yep, there's a little
You do?
popcorn patch. There's enough space for a little pumpkin patch in there. So when you start adding up all the vegetables we plant, then you just kind of segment things. So there's about 6 rows of this, and it's a nice variety. If anybody's curious, you can email me. I'll give you the seed variety.
That's great.
I'll hold that as my secret right now.
You have to have secret, and that's fine.
And
because
it's a really good seed, by the way.
'Cause I'm
it
holding
never ever has let me down.
Good.
So I'll put that out there. If you want to know, just send me an email. So this is the bean patch, or one of we have 3 of them, 3 sets of 2 or 3 rows. They're just pretty small, but nice crop there. That's looking good. I just got to keep up with it. That's my biggest thing. And then the rest of the tomatoes are kind of back in here. There's just a jungle. It's kind of, at this point, everything's kind of growing and together. There's a couple of gourd plants over there that are getting too carried away, and they're going where they probably shouldn't go. But I'm forgiving. I'll let them zone out a little bit. I have turned a few of the vines around, Scott, though. There's certain things they can't get into, so they're permissible. But kale, do you like kale?
We've grown kale before, but it seems like we just couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah.
You have to pick it at the right time. You really have to pick it at the right time.
Yeah.
My understanding. We just
you get those new leaves in there.
Yeah.
They're nice. We do a little bit in the air fryer.
You make I was about to ask you make kale chips.
Well, that and then sometimes the salads, they'll be good, and it's a very healthy plant,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of health benefits to that. And then this was pretty. So this is a dwarf sunflower, and that guy there is probably about 3 feet tall. There's another one behind it. You can't see it.
Okay.
And those are kind of cute. They're dwarf teddy bear, I think is what they're called. I'll have to get the exact name. But, Lily likes those a lot. My girls find those kind of fun. And then there's a cool zinnia there on the right side. And the zinnias are having a heyday. They're a great, easy flower. We actually do quite a few of those just because, for simplicity's sake, life is busy. I just don't have a lot of time to nurture a lot of little more interesting little plants. So zinnias are a quick fix to just, here's some color.
I was about to say, it adds color.
Yeah.
That's great.
And we'll do cut flowers, and, the girls will pick those, bring them into the house and all that. So, yeah, garden, mid-August is kind of a fun thing, and, it doesn't last long. So just be intentional about your time in the garden. And but, harvest, too, is kind of fun. It'd be nice to get to that. You said that popcorn. I just need to make sure my grasshopper population, which so far has been pretty low, the rains have helped that. So keep the grasshoppers down, then that crop will kind of finish out a little stronger too.
Yes, so. And nice to see that. Thanks for bringing those in. You did your homework. I think that was Friday's assignment. You mentioned
my homework.
We had some homework to do. And take pictures of our garden.
I'll add some more to it maybe later in the week. As I know I'll be busy though. We're going to go to the fair a couple times. So yeah, but you got to do that too this time of year. These fairs are fun and good chance to meet and greet people and
the weather should hold out.
That's correct.
Be all right for that. Well, thank you for joining us on this latest edition of Whether or Not. We'll see you next time.